Not every call ends with a hello dot. Some end in screams, others in silence, and some should never have been made. Today, you're going to hear 3 real calls that you were never meant to hear. It was supposed to be just another quiet night of babysitting, one of those simple jobs. Just a few hours. She had done it dozens of times before. The kids' parents had gone out for dinner with friends. They had left the emergency number stuck to the fridge, just like they always did. Nothing out of the ordinary. The children, aged 6 and 8, had been asleep for almost an hour. The babysitter, sitting on the living room couch, was enjoying the silence to rest. The TV was on, but the volume was so low she could barely hear what was being said on the show. It was just background noise, a constant sound to chase away the loneliness of the big, quiet house. She picked up her phone, opened her social media, started scrolling through the feed, checked the time, 10:43 p.m. Just a few more hours, and the parents would be back. Every now and then, she glanced at the baby monitor, which showed black and white footage of the children's room. Everything seemed in order. The clock ticked softly on the wall. The wind outside made the branches tap gently against the front window. Nothing threatening, just normal sounds of an ordinary night. She took a deep breath, stretched her legs on the couch, adjusted the pillow behind her back, unaware that from that moment on, that ordinary night was about to turn into a real nightmare. Around 11:10 p.m., per phone VIBRATED. Suddenly, without warning, she looked at the screen. Her heart skipped a beat. Restricted number, no name, no number, no location, just that cold message. Restricted number. She hesitated for a few seconds, thought about ignoring it, but for some reason, maybe instinct, maybe curiosity, she answered. She held the phone to her ear, and on the other end, only silence. For a few seconds, all she could hear was a faint static, like interference, as if the call had a bad signal. She whispered a timid, "Hello." That's when she heard it, a voice, low, drawn out, almost a whisper, just 2 words. 2 words that froze the blood in her veins. Look at the window. Her heart began to race. Her breath caught in her chest. By reflex, she turned her head slowly, her trembling eyes shifting toward the living room window. Outside, across the street, standing completely still, there was someone, a dark figure, motionless, just watching, standing under the faint glow of a streetlight, as if they had been there for a long time, just waiting, watching her every move. She jumped to her feet, ran to the curtain and yanked it closed. Her breathing now rapid, her hands shaking, the phone still in her hand. But now the call had already ended. She looked again at her phone screen. No record of an incoming call, as if that call never happened. The silence in the house now felt heavier, more menacing, and for the first time that night, she began to feel truly afraid, even though she had closed the curtains, even though she tried to convince herself it was just a prank, the fear, had already taken hold. Her heart was still racing, her breathing shallow, her hands sweaty. She grabbed her phone again, opened the camera, as if she could use the screen's reflection to discreetly peek through the curtain. For by a few seconds, she hesitated, but curiosity, mixed with survival instinct, was stronger. She gently pulled the curtain aside, just enough to see outside, and the figure was still there, standing still, not moving, not making a single gesture. What terrified her most was the feeling that the person was staring directly at her, even in the darkness. Even with the faint light, she could feel it, that fixed gaze, piercing through the distance, as if they knew exactly where she was. She tried to get a better look, but it was impossible to make out any details. The face, completely hidden, in shadow. No expression, no clue as to who it could be, just that presence, motionless, like a statue. Watching. Her mind started spinning scenarios. Was it a neighbor playing a prank, a stranger, or someone with far darker intentions? Suddenly, a sharp noise, a creak, coming from the back door. She jumped, ran to check. The lock was still in place. Came back to the living room, made sure all the windows were locked too. But then the phone rang again. The screen showed the same message, restricted number. Her body froze, with trembling hands. She answered once more, and this time the voice sounded closer, clearer, as if the person was already inside the house. Just one sentence, spoken in a tone she would never forget. You shouldn't have looked. Her body froze. For a moment, she was completely still, as if time itself had stopped. That last sentence, that voice, so close, so real, echoed in her mind like a death warning. She threw the phone onto the couch, ran to the front door, turned the key, locked the second bolt, then secured the chain. She rushed to the back door, checked it again. Everything was locked, but what about the windows? She ran from room to room, checking each one, closing the ones that were still open, trying to breathe, trying to think clearly. The fear was now overwhelming. Finally, she picked up the landline, dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice answered on the other end. Emergency services. What's your situation? Trying to hold back her tears, she explained what was happening. There's someone watching me outside. I got 2 strange phone calls, and now I think they're inside. I'm alone with 2 kids. Please help me. The dispatcher remained calm, asked for the full address, told her to lock herself in a secure room, and to stay on the line until the police arrived. During the call, in the background, you could hear her footsteps running through the house, doors closing, the children still sleeping, innocent, unaware of the terror unfolding. But when she reached the room where the kids were sleeping, what she saw made her blood run cold. The bedroom windows, the one she was absolutely certain she had locked, was now open. The curtain swayed with the breeze, and a chill ran down her spine. Oh my God, he's in here. He's in the house, she cried into the phone, panicking. The dispatcher, with a firm voice, told her to leave the room immediately, told her to go to the bathroom, lock the door, and take the phone with her. The babysitter obeyed, locked herself in the small bathroom, sat on the floor, hugging her knees, with the phone pressed to her ear. The call was still ongoing, but now, besides the dispatcher's voice, there seemed to be a second sound, a metallic sound, distant, like someone dragging something heavy inside the house. The dispatcher asked, "Are you still there? Can you hear me? The police are on their way." But before she could answer, a new sound came, this time right outside the bathroom door, a creak, as if someone was leaning against it, just waiting. The babysitter covered her mouth with her hand, trying to muffle her sobs, trying not to make a sound. And in that moment, she knew she was no longer alone. Inside that house, the silence inside the bathroom was suffocating. She kept her hand over her mouth, trying not to breathe too loudly, trying to listen for any movement outside, on the other side of the door. Footsteps, slow, dragging, as if the person or thing was deliberately making every sound, just so she'd know. It was getting closer. The phone was still pressed to her ear. The voice of the emergency operator kept calling out, "Ma'am, stay on the line. The patrol car is just a few minutes away from your location. Stay where you are. You're going to be okay." But she already knew that wasn't true, because in that moment she heard it clearly. The bathroom doorknob starting to turn, slowly, creaking, like someone was testing it, checking, waiting for her to react. Her heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it might burst out of her chest. She backed into the corner of the bathroom, hugged her knees, tears streaming down her face. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Then, a new sound from the phone itself. In the police recording later, attached to the official report, it's possible to hear. In the background, a second voice, low, grotesque, as if whispering directly into the line. The emergency operator stopped speaking because she heard it too. And in the audio logs, you can clearly hear the moment the dispatcher says, "Is there someone else on the line with us?" Before she could get an answer, the call was cut off by a scream, loud, desperate, a scream that sounded like it tore through the babysitter's throat. Then, silence. Total. The call dropped minutes later, when the police finally arrived. The house was locked from the inside, no signs of forced entry. The children, still asleep, unharmed, as if nothing had happened. But the babysitter, she had simply vanished. The only evidence left behind was the recording of that final call, ending with the scream, and in the background, the sound of something or someone whispering, something no one has been able to clearly understand to this day. It was an ordinary night in a small rural town. Little movement in the streets, a cloudy sky. Most houses already dark, their lights turned off. At the 911 call center, Operators were handling routine calls, strange noises, neighbor disputes, nothing out of the ordinary. Until, at 2:13 in the morning, the phone rang, and on the other end of the line came a voice, desperate, without identifying themselves. The person could only repeat the same sentence, their voice choked, trembling, like someone on the edge of complete panic. "He's here. He's inside my house." The recording of the call, to this day, has never been officially released to the public. But according to police reports, the audio captured that night was one of the most disturbing ever received. The victim's voice was pure desperation, heavy breathing, the sound of doors being locked, furniture being dragged, like she was trying to build an improvised barricade. The dispatcher tried to calm the caller, asking her to describe the intruder, but all she could say, between sobs and gasping breaths, was, "He's behind the door. I can hear him. He's waiting for me. He knows I'm here." Her voice grew weaker, as if she was moving away from the phone or hiding, trying not to be heard. At one point, the sound of a single footstep, very close to the phone, was picked up, and then silence, and then a scream, short, high-pitched, the kind of scream someone lets out when they know it's the last one. The call dropped. The patrol cars arrived at the registered address in less than 6 minutes. According to the reports, the front door was found ajar. No signs of forced entry. Lights on in some rooms, but no response. No matter how much the officers called out, they searched every room, opened closets, looked under the beds, checked the basement, the attic. Nothing. The victim had simply disappeared. No body, no signs of a struggle, only the phone, lying on the living room floor, still connected to the line, and the sound of static echoing on speaker. The strangest part was that all the neighbors claimed they hadn't seen anything. No one heard any screams. No one saw anyone leaving the house. That night, the forensic team found no unusual fingerprints, no footprints, not even any signs of forced entry. As the days passed, the case began to take on an almost supernatural air. Some started to believe it wasn't an ordinary intruder. Others said the victim seemed to be hallucinating. But anyone who heard the recording insists that fear was real, that scream was real. The most frightening detail is that the recording, was used as evidence in the investigation, but for reasons never fully explained. The original audio was never released to the public, at least until now. Recently, a version of the recording began circulating on obscure internet forums. Some people say they've listened to it. Others warn that no one should listen all the way through. The reason those who hear it to the final seconds report hearing a second voice emerging in the background of the call. A voice no one knows where it came from, nor whose it was. For years, the old gravedigger named Elias had taken care of the small-town cemetery all by himself. He was a quiet man, worn by time, used to the silence among the tombstones. But there was one thing he could never explain, something that started happening after a certain funeral, a sad case, a young woman, tragically killed in a car accident. Few family members, few friends at the wake. That same week, the phone in the funeral parlor started ringing, always at the same time. 3:17 a.m. Elias thought it was a coincidence, some prank or a mistake by the operator. But when he answered the first time, what he heard never left his mind. The call always lasted only a few seconds. He would answer, and on the other end, the same voice, feminine, weak, tearful, always repeating the same phrase, "I'm still here. Please, don't leave me alone." It was like hearing someone from the other side of life. The sadness in the voice was so deep, so real, that Elias even believed it was a relative of the deceased in extreme mourning. But the calls kept coming, night after night, always at 3:17, always the same phrase, always the same voice. And what scared him the most was that the number the call came from never showed up. Tired of trying to explain the inexplicable, Elias decided to record one of the calls. He placed a recorder next to the landline phone, waited through the night, and, as always, at 3:17 a.m., the phone rang. He answered, and the voice came, low, sobbing, repeating, "I'm still here. Please, don't leave me alone." He said nothing. He just let the recorder capture every word. The next day, he played the audio for a local priest, then for a phone company technician, then for the police. No one could explain it, even stranger. All the phone lines in that area were checked. No record of any incoming call. No origin. No activity at that time. It was as if the call had come from nowhere. Frightened, Elias decided to cut the evil at its root. He went to the wall of the funeral parlor and pulled the phone cord out. He disconnected everything. There was no way to receive calls anymore. But the next night, 3:17, the phone rang, without being plugged in, without electrical connection, without a phone line. It rang, and the sound was the same, low, old, as if time itself was trapped inside that device. Elias didn't answer. In fact, he never went back into that room again. He asked for a transfer and never returned to work at that cemetery. To this day, the recording of that call remains archived. Some say they've heard it. Others claim the voice on the tape changes depending on who listens. Some hear a young woman. Others hear the voice of someone from their own family. But in every version, one phrase remains the same. "I'm still here. Please, don't leave me alone." A plea that perhaps doesn't come only from the other side of the line, but from the other side of life. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You've just heard 3 calls that should never have been answered. But now, tell me this. If your phone rang at 3 a.m., would you answer?